let's move right along to focusing a little bit on Iran and the Trump administration. Ali, what can you
Well,
say?
last week, regular viewers will recall, we did some analysis of that Netanyahu-Trump meeting at the White House on April 7th and what it all added up to. And we put forward the idea, we perhaps weren't the only ones, but we did put forward the idea that this meant that Trump was not going to back, at least for now, an Israeli attack on Iran or take part as a US attack. Uh, for reasons we described last week, people could go back and watch that. But now we have this report in the New York Times that came out late last night and is being widely discussed. And I think we could see the headline. It says Trump waved off Israeli strike after divisions emerged in his administration. And the long and the short of it is that the Israelis had been pushing very hard for an attack on Iran, which basically could not happen without massive U.S. participation. This article is an admission that Israel by itself is incapable of mounting a significant attack on Iran, let alone one that would cause significant or permanent damage to its nuclear facilities. And so they were lobbying hard for the United States and the Trump administration to participate. But basically, it says that Trump said no. It says Trump made his decision after months of internal debate over whether to pursue diplomacy or support Israel in seeking to set back Iran's ability to build a bomb at a time when Iran has been weakened militarily and economically. There's a lot of spin in this. They claim that Iran's missiles are duds and they couldn't get through Israel's air defenses, which is not the case from what we saw on October 1st, which was not a full-scale Iranian attack on Israel. And then they talk about supposed fault lines which, by the way, are sort of similar fault lines we saw over the ongoing attacks on Yemen and on Ukraine, where supposedly there are fault lines between a more neocon wing of the administration and what some are calling an America First wing, which includes J.D. Vance, the vice president, and Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence. I mean, they make it sound neater than it is. This administration is very chaotic with, everyone freelancing and speaking as they want to. But the New York Times does say that some American officials were at least initially more open to considering the Israeli plans. General Michael E. Kurilla, the head of U.S. Central Command, and Michael Waltz, the national security advisor, both discussed how the United States could potentially support an Israeli attack if Mr. Trump backed the plan, according to officials briefed on the discussions. And that's interesting because, like with many New York Times or Washington Post stories, this all comes in leaks from top government officials. So also we have to read this article as something the administration wants the world to know. It could be a bluff. Maybe they want Iran to feel a false sense of security that, oh, look, we put Israel in check. But also they may want to send a message in the other direction and say, look, we are not willing to just go along with what Israel wants. And then they say that during a visit earlier this month, General Kurilla told officials there, Israeli officials, that the White House wanted to put the plan to attack the nuclear facility on hold. Mr. Netanyahu called Mr. Trump on April 3rd. According to Israeli officials, Mr. Trump told Mr. Netanyahu that he did not want to discuss Iran plans on the phone, but he invited Mr. Netanyahu to come to the White House. Mr. Netanyahu arrived in Washington on April 7th. While the trip was presented as an opportunity for him to argue against Mr. Trump's tariffs, The most important discussion for the Israelis was their planned strike on Iran. In private discussions, Mr. Trump made clear to Mr. Netanyahu that he would not provide American support for an Israeli attack in May while the negotiations are playing out, according to officials briefed on the discussions. The next day, Mr. Trump suggested that an Israeli military strike against Iran remained an option. If it requires military, we're going to have military, Mr. Trump said. And then let's take a look at that clip. It's actually a bit of a longer clip. We could have cut it, but I just think it's interesting to listen to Trump's stream of consciousness here. So we'll actually listen to the whole thing. It's about 2 minutes long, so brace yourselves.
Ali.
Well, maybe I'll call for it to be cut at some point. But let's just roll with it.
Okay.
Specifically,
Well, they can't have a nuclear weapon.
did you mean military action, though, if they don't agree?
Oh, if necessary? Absolutely. Yeah.
And do you have a
deadline for these
Yeah,
talks?
I do.
And
You're talking about with Iran?
Yes.
Yeah, I
they're
do.
saying it's not
Do you want something
deductible.
definitive this weekend, or do you see this as the start of a process?
It's a start.
Do you have a timeline?
We have a little time, but we don't have much time
Who is it starting?
because we're not going to let them have a nuclear weapon.
Is it
Can't
you
let them have
all
a
going to be
nuclear
there,
weapon.
Mr.
And
President?
we're going to let them thrive. I want them to thrive. I want Iran to be great. The only thing they can't have is a nuclear weapon. They understand that. You know, the people are so incredible in Iran, and they're so smart. They're very smart people. But, you know, they're in a rough situation, rough regime. But they understand, and the leaders understand. And I'm not asking for much. I don't, they can't have a nuclear weapon, and I've said that. And I was a little bit surprised because when the election was rigged, I figured they'd get the weapon because with me they were broke. They were broke. They had no money because of the sanctions. Nobody could buy oil. We did that to Venezuela just recently, and we'll do it to other countries if we have to.
What is the
I want to see Russia and Ukraine make a deal. They got to make a deal. When schools get blown up and bad things happen, like I'm hearing about, it's no good. I hope we're going to make a deal with Russia and Ukraine. But with Iran, if it requires military, we're going to have military. Israel will obviously be very much involved in that. He'll be the leader of that. But nobody leads us. We do what we want to do.
When would the talks run out on the talks? Before
Say-
you might, when would the talks need to conclude before you might do military?
I can't really be specific, but you know, when you start talks, you know if they're going along well or not. And I would say the conclusion would be when I think they're not going along well. So that's just a feeling.
Mr. President, on the subject of U.S. troops stationed in Europe, do you have any plans to reduce the number of
I think
US
we
troops,
can
in
stop
Europe
it
or
there.
other nations?
Now, there's a couple of interesting things here. I'm sure people will notice other things, but two things stand out for me. One is he says the only thing they can't have is a nuclear weapon, and that's very interesting because that's if he actually means that, and if he sticks to it, which of course we know with Trump, you can't.
Anything's possible.
Anything's possible, but that's significant wording. He says the only thing they can't have is a nuclear weapon. He doesn't say they can't have a nuclear program. Remember when Netanyahu went to Washington, he sat there and he talked about, we want a Libya solution, which to him means going in, dismantling all the reactors, completely taking apart Iran's nuclear program, and then maybe overthrowing the regime, which is what happened in Libya. Trump didn't say that. And so the original nuclear deal, the JCPOA signed by the Obama administration in 2015 said basically was the only thing Iran can't have is a nuclear weapon. It can have a nuclear energy program and research and so on. So let's see where that goes. That's interesting. He didn't put an impossibly high ceiling. At the same time, he did talk about potential military action, which I will not be surprised if it happens. But from what we know, it doesn't look like the US is eager to follow Israel's lead into a war with Iran. And then that language, he said, Israel will lead it, but then he sort of remembered that doesn't sound good. And he said, nobody leads us. So that caught my attention too.
Yeah, and he didn't. He also is interesting that he doesn't say that the usual sort of language of Iran has to stop supporting terrorism, so-called terrorism. He's not, not bringing in that maximalist position.
I'm
But
sure
I
the
mean,
New York Times did for him.
as always, you can see why the liberals hate Trump, because he just lays plain the American imperialism. He just sort of says it. The countries have to do this. The country has have to do that, and he dispenses with all the pleasantries.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else we want to add about Iran, or I know we want to get to Lebanon as well.
The one thing I'll say is that the Iranian foreign minister, Mr. Arakchi, did make a comment that it's very hard to, Iran is there, they're negotiating, but it's really hard when the US position seems to shift every 5 minutes. And I think Russia is in a similar circumstance when they're trying to negotiate. Like, depends on the time of day and who's speaking.
Yeah.
You really don't have any. You're trying to guess what the U.S. position is, and that makes negotiations very hard. And that's not because the Americans are deliberately keeping people guessing as a strategy. There is genuine chaos in this administration when it comes to coordinating positions among different actors.